Hey, this is John Carlos, and I'm here with a look at the DC Collectibles action figure of The Flash, from the CW's The Flash. I'm a big fan of The Flash TV show. I've been really looking forward to this action figure, so let's just dive right on in and check out the articulation first. He's got a hinge at the waist that also hinges out to the side. It's not a ball joint, but it does have swiveling thighs and a double knee joint, which I always really dig. And he's got a hinge at the boot. He's got a boot cut, not a hinge, a swivel. Speaking of swivel, you've got the swivel at the ankles, which helps stabilize the figure. Whoever thought of this a few years ago for action figures was a really smart person, because it really helps the figure stand. There is no cut at the waist, but there is a cut at the torso. It's a little tight. Doesn't really move that much, but the rest moves well. The arms have a ball hinge and a ball hinge at the elbow. And you've got a swivel and a hinge at the wrists. He comes with some alternate hands, and they all have that hinge at the wrist. Lastly, we've got his head, which, yeah, it moves fine left to right, but as far as range of motion up and down, this little ball joint in there really doesn't have that much to it. Same thing with tilting it side to side. Now, speaking of his head, I like this figure for the most part, but I do think his head is a little too small compared to the rest of his body. In fact, when you watch the show, his head, when it's underneath that mask, it does have some mass to it, and I just think the head should be a little bit bigger when you look at the rest of his body. Other than that, I think this is a great figure. I think the fact that they did like this texturing on this whole part of his costume, along his arms, along his chest, compared to like the leathering texture here, they did some great sculpting creating all those textures. You can see it on the sleeves versus the rest of his arm. The gold paint looks really good. I think the sculpt of like the fabric material kind of bending, especially at the knees, looks really, really cool. So between like the texture of the fabric and the wrinkle of the fabric and the overall paint, which has some like dark black washes to it, so it gives the red a little bit more of a surface color texture, is really good. The logo on his chest looks good. The gold on the back's solid. Just, you know, kind of a tiny head. But his eyes look good, his mouth looks good. For some reason when I was hunting for this, I saw a lot of awful heads where the red paint was just blotched all over his face. I saw like 7 of these. This is the only one that had a clean face. But the little bolt on the side of his head looks good. He comes with this alternate pair of hands where they're like kind of like karate chop running hands. And then these sort of, no, they're not really grip hands. He doesn't come with any other accessories to grip, but they're kind of like in a relaxed position. I switched out his right hand with the little karate chop hand and his left hand with the grip, and they were really easy to pop off and pop on, so I'm really glad about that. I also like that all the hands have the little gray section right there in the bottom of his palm and by his thumb. I'm glad they all caught that detail. Now, I mentioned that his torso doesn't have that much of range of motion, but I didn't really pay attention to how far forward he can bend down. I think that's pretty cool. That's optimal if you want to pose him in a running position. I'm cheating here and using this figure stand from NECA's Dog Alien from Alien 3. But here he is, and I think, man, with the kind of articulation you can get him some really cool running poses, as long as you have like a good, you know, stand to support it. Well, now I'm kind of messing it up, but you get the idea. There we go. I think he looks really, really cool. I'm really happy with the way this figure turned out. I think that the use of like the burgundy and gold paints on this sculpt, really, really strong. I love this. Thanks for watching.